can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. Right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here. I'm a founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Before I introduce today's guest, which, JeVon, I have created this podcast for this very day, for JeVon. I mean, you'll see why. This is why it's called Inspired Insider, is because I love talking about stories that are the challenges, what builds our character, what builds us as individuals. And this story today is just that. If I always like to point people to other podcast episodes to check out. I had the founder of P90X, Tony Horton. What I love, JeVon, about that story is like he's generated tons of success, but what people don't know about him is he drove cross country with basically no money all the way to California. And the way he made food and rent money was he was a street mime. So he did street miming, put a hat on the street, and that's how he made his food and rent money when he was up and coming. And Julie Clark of Baby Einstein grew her company with 5 employees to $20 million in a very short period of time, selling to Disney. But what was impressive to me was she beat cancer twice. She had cancer throughout that time. And just those tremendous stories don't get told. And there's so many more. So go to InspiredInsider.com and check out more episodes. And this episode, before I introduce JeVon McCormick of Scribe Media, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships. And we do that by helping you run your podcast. And for me, JeVon, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my relationships. How do I profile the people and companies I admire on my podcast to give to them? And that's why I've been podcasting for over a decade. I've never stopped doing it. It's the best thing I've ever done. And, if you are encouraged, you should be encouraged to, if you have a business, you should have a podcast, in my opinion. You'll go to rise25.com, check out and learn more. And, ultimately, JeVon, what inspired me to podcast, and I don't tell this story all the time, which I started telling it, I don't know, maybe like 9 years ago or so, is because my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and him and his brother were in concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And they were the only members of their family to survive. And his legacy lives on because of an interview, because the Holocaust Foundation did an interview with him. And so now my kids can watch it, my grandkids can watch it, my great-grandkids can watch it. And it's going to be similar with JeVon's story and also with Scribe Media, actually, because what Scribe Media does is helps people tell their story so it lives on. Their legacy lives on through the books that they create. And so without further ado, let me introduce JeVon McCormick. And it's a really heart-wrenching story. I encourage everyone. He's given a talk several times that you should listen to, but he was born, just a little bit of background, was born the mixed race son of a drug dealing pimp father and orphaned single mother on welfare. And he was raised in the slums of Dayton, Ohio, suffered incredible abuse and racism. I don't know how you tell your story, JeVon, honestly, without crying or breaking down. You say it with such composure when you're doing it. Cause like I've watched it probably almost 10 times now, legitimately. And, I get emotional when I hear your story. And, he had multiple stints in the juvenile justice system, barely graduated high school, has no college degree, started scrubbing toilets, hustled and worked his way into the banking and mortgage industry, did really well there until we know what happened in the mortgage industry. It fell apart. He lost his job, lost his money, and had to borrow from his friends to make rent. But, he is resilient. He springboarded, made millions in the stock market, eventually became president of 2 multimillion-dollar companies, a software company, now is a president and CEO of Scribe Media, which I mentioned is a publishing company that helps people write and publish and market their books. They've worked with over 1,900 authors, including David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, that sold over 2 million copies. And JeVon has a book, which you should check out. I Got There, How I Overcame Racism, Poverty, and Abuse to Achieve the American Dream. JeVon, this is when I stopped talking, but it just, thank you for joining me.
My man, how are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm glad to have you. And, I kind of wanted to, I'm like, where do I start with this story? And I kind of want to start on a plane ride. I think, you never wanted to share your story.
Nah.
with anyone.
No.
And you wanted to keep it a secret. And what changed on that plane ride?
I had my children at the time. I had two at the time of that plane ride, and I hit turbulence, and it really jumped out to me that, wow, if something happened to me, my children would not know where I came from in my background. So when I got off the plane, my whole mission was, okay, how can I put my story in a book? And here's what's key to this. I just wanted to put it in a book. I didn't want to make it public. I just needed a book, much like the video of your grandfather. I just needed something to where my great grandchildren would know, okay, here's our origin story, because I don't have one. Like I said, my mother was an orphan. I don't know where my last name comes from still to this day. You nailed it. My father was a black pimp and drug dealer. He fathered 23 children. And I wanted that to my kids to know those things. So that became the mission. How do I put my story in a book? And I only wanted 5 copies, man. I did not want this book to be public. There were things in there. And I'm like, oh man, if this goes public, a lot of people are going to be like, wait a minute. I thought he had a degree. Hold on. I thought he was Mexican. And so I did not want that book to go public, but here we are.
So what changed? So you meet with Tucker, and what happens?
So I'll give you the story. I was the president of a software company, and we had scaled that company. I started off as the lowest paid person in that software company. I was employee number 13. I used to sit on a fold out metal chair in a storage closet. And within 2.5 years, I became the president of the company. Long story short, we scaled that company from that storage closet to end up having offices in Austin, Houston, Dallas, and Monterrey, Mexico. At that time, it was about 5 years I was there. That's when it hit me, man, I gotta write this book for my kids. I reached out to my network and got introduced to Tucker Max. And so I got to give you the story behind this, man. So the way I got introduced was, the standard BS.
There's always a story behind
always a story,
Tucker
man.
Max. Yeah,
yes. Yeah. And so the introduction email goes, as all of them do, hey, Tucker, this is JT. JT, this is Tucker, blah, blah, blah. And then in a second email, Jason emails me and says, hey, that's the real Tucker Max. Well, I didn't know who Tucker Max was. So I emailed Jeremy back, smartass. I went, well, hey, I'm the real JT McCormick. What's up? And so then I Googled Tucker and I was like, oh, wow. And so he comes over to my office. We're sitting in this massive conference room. I'm telling him my story. I say to Tucker, now keep in mind, Tucker sold damn near 5 million copies of his books throughout his career. Tucker's sitting across from me and I go, hey man, I don't ever want to sell a copy of a book. I only need 5 copies. And Tucker looks and he goes, I've never heard anyone say they don't want to sell any copies. I go, I'm not doing it for fame. I'm doing this for my kids. And he said, okay, I tell you what, will you give me feedback on our company as you go through our process? At the time, Tucker and Zach, the 2 co-founders, their company was only about 13 months old. So I said, yeah, why not? I'll give you feedback. He goes, man, you've built a great company here, talking about the software company. And I said to him, I go, look, no one person ever builds a great company. It takes an incredible team of people to build a great company. I said, so I'll give you feedback. On the first email I got from the company, I called up Tucker. I said, hey, do you still want this feedback? He says, yes. I said, okay, man, I swing hard. And he goes, go for it. I go, okay, this is good. This is good. Stop doing this. What the hell were you thinking? And this is dumb as shit. And he goes, you got all that from an email? And I go, yes. He said, hey, would you sit on our advisory board? I'm like, yeah, okay, why not? One thing, I'll speed up a little bit.
No, go ahead. I want to get a little granular with that. Like, what did you see that needed improvement? What were you seeing through the email that needed improvement in the company?
It was just the communication. What they didn't realize was they figured out how to deliver a great quality book. What they hadn't figured out was the author experience from the time that they engage to the time that book is published. And what you don't want to have happen is someone gets to the end of the process and they go, oh my God, your book is so great. It's beautiful. The content's phenomenal. How was your publisher? What you don't want to have happen is your publisher was horrible. They sucked. They were, and so I expressed to them, I go, man, you are in the services and product business. Many people don't realize that, yes, some companies are a service company, some companies are a product company. And Jeremy, what I mean by that, here's a great example of this. If you and I go right now this afternoon to the Apple store and we want the new iPhone, if the customer service rep is rude to us, we care, but at the same time, I'm there for that iPhone. So be it that you're nice to me, be it that you're rude to me, I'm coming out of there with the product, the iPhone. Well, we don't have that luxury. We're working with authors for 9, 12 months. It's intimate. It's a relationship. So we have to provide a phenomenal author experience and an incredible book. So we're in the services and the product business. And that's the piece that was really missing. They always had quality coming out of the company in their 13 months, but they were missing the experience factor.
Yeah. I mean, it was a friend was telling me the other day, they had worked on like construction on their house. It looks beautiful, but it was the worst experience of their life. Right.
I give everyone that example.
Yeah. So I totally get it. So you talk to Tucker, you give him feedback on this email. So you're still in the mindset of, I'm going to do $5 here when you do the book. Okay. I
only want 5 copies of this book. And so again, fast forward, then Zach and Tucker invited me to a quote unquote executive meeting. And I went to this executive meeting. I'm like, man, this is broke. And so I didn't give any direction. I just asked questions. I sat in the meeting. I asked questions. That was it. Fast forward, Tucker and Zach invited me to Starbucks. We sat down and they said, hey, if we give you a ton of equity, would you come be the CEO of the company? And it was in that moment I said to myself, wow, I'm the president of a software company right now and I can't write code. And now I can be the CEO of a publishing company and I can't spell and can't tell you an adverb from an adjective. And I remember thinking to myself, God bless America. And I said, yeah, man, I'm in. Let's do it. So, and here we are, 5, almost 6 years later, and here we are.
So at what point do you decide to release the book out to the public?
As we were doing the book, because I became the CEO and I was working here at that point, and I was able to delay the book by way of saying, oh, I'm busy scaling the company. And so we had to put the book off to the side. But through a lot of conversation,
it's a big decision,
Oh, man.
It's a really big decision.
A lot of conversations, a lot of support, a lot of encouragement. I said, okay, fine. I'll release the book. And matter of fact, I'll even share this with you. I remember we had like a little book launch party at a bookstore here in Austin. And we're getting ready. And my wife says to me, she goes, oh my God, this is so exciting. Are you excited? And I go, no. And she goes, why?
Did she read the book beforehand? I mean,
she knew all the stories.
Yeah,
I mean, she knew my background.
Yeah.
She was one of the very few people in the world who actually knew all the actual stories. But I explained to her, I said, think of this. And I told her, I said, everything that you've shared with people, everything that people thought you were, now is going to be out into the world and people are going to say, what? Oh, I thought he had an MBA. Wait a minute. I thought he was Puerto Rican. And I said, all of my secrets, all the things, I said the stuff about my baby sister. I don't know if we'll get into that. I said the fact that my dad had 23 kids. No one knew that. No one knew my dad was a pimp and had 23 kids. No one knew that. No one on earth other than me, my mother, and my wife knew that I didn't know where my last name came from. I said, now all of this is going to be out there and be public. And I said, no, I'm not excited about that. And she goes, okay, that makes sense.
When I talked to Tucker, and I encourage people to check out that interview as well, he was a different person, obviously, in college than he was when he met his wife. And he did a lot of self work to get to that point where I think he said, I had to be a different person. I knew I did need to be a different person for that person once I met them to be my wife. For when you met your wife, at what point do you share what, that you probably haven't shared with anyone, any of this?
I'll back up a bit before there. So, because you talked about it somewhat. 2007, when I lost all my money, I had made some money, some good money, $1 million. And even then, in my investing accounts, there was a lot of people that did not know that I had made $1 million. Didn't want you to know who I was. Didn't want you to know I had that money. And I remember when I lost all the money, there was a night I went to the convenience store to put gas in my car because I had no money, and I had to dig into my change container, and I got $10 of quarters out of it. I went over to the gas station, 10:30 at night, never forget this. And I walked into the attendant, and I put my quarters on the table, and I said, "Could I have $10 on pump number 7?" And I remember walking back to the car, and I said to myself, "Damn, how did I get myself back here again?" But I literally smiled, because I already knew what it was like to be poor. So I wasn't scared of being poor. I was disappointed in myself for putting myself back in there, but I knew poor so well that I had a conversation with poor. I was like, "Hey, poor, good to see you again, man. Didn't think I was going to see you again, but hey, I'm back." So because I knew what poor was, so I wasn't afraid of poor. I knew what that looked like. What hit me the most is when I got back to my little apartment, I stood in the mirror and I realized, wow, okay, so I had a lot of money. I lost a lot of money, but I'm the same person. The money didn't change me. And when it hit me, I was like, oh my God, my character is horrible. I can't hold a relationship. No one's ever really known who I am. In relationships, I was never 100%. You never really knew all of me. I didn't want you to. And I was a monster in relationships. And I had to look in the mirror, have an out loud conversation and say, wow, you're just like the person you didn't want to be like, your dad. And that really hit me that, okay, you taught yourself with no college degree, with only a GED, how to navigate the business world. You taught yourself how to make money in stocks. You never taught yourself how to have a relationship. And I don't blame anyone for this. So because I don't do this victimhood shit and, oh, my parents were divorced and I come from a broken family. Get out of here with that. But here's the fact. I did not know what a healthy relationship was supposed to look like because I never saw one. I saw my dad, I saw my mom. Neither were in healthy relationships. So I did not
Typically, people probably model what they know.
Right. Oh, Jeremy, you got to let me go off on a tangent on this.
Go ahead.
So here's what's interesting about what you just said. People model what they see. In my opinion, this is why the middle class is so big. Because if you come from a 2-parent home, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath house, you go on a 2-week vacation each year, maybe your mom and dad both work, maybe you just have one working home, whatever the case may be, you tend to model what you grew up in. If your parents were Jewish or Catholic or Methodist, whatever, you tend to become what you grew up around. I didn't grow up around any structure or anything. And I even say this, I actually feel that benefited me greatly because the middle class, there's a standard. There's the 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. Okay, get a good college degree, get a good job, worked there 30 years. I didn't have that. What I had was dirt poor, have pulled food out of the trash cans, have been left alone with my siblings, heroin addicts, drug addicts, pimps. That's where I came from. And at 10 years old, when my dad drove me through River Oaks in Houston, Texas, the exclusive neighborhood, all I saw was, wait a minute, I didn't even know this existed. So I saw $5, $10, $25 million homes. That became my level of, okay, I want that. So there was, to your point, was the model of what you see has a very big effect on what you become. Well, I didn't have a model other than, my dad did shitty things. I never saw my mom in a good, healthy relationship. So I didn't know how to have one. So that became then, how do I teach myself to have a good relationship? And so when I finally, and it didn't happen overnight. But when I finally met my wife, that was my commitment. I said, okay, I gotta let her know who I am up front. She's either going to accept me for who I am or the shit ain't going to work. And thank God she accepted me for who I am.
JeVon, thanks for sharing that. Do you seek outside help for that when you realize that? Or, I mean, you're an avid learner in general. What do you do to say, okay, I'm not sure what to do here. I don't have a model for this.
No, I didn't seek outside help. I started paying attention. I started just like I did everything else. You know, there was no model for me to learn about stocks. But where I learned was paying attention, reading, observing. The gift that was given to me in the chaos that I grew up in as a kid was the gift of observation. You're constantly looking, trying to avoid chaos, trying to avoid the next time you'll be sexually molested, trying to avoid getting an ass beating or jumped by a group of kids. So you're constantly paying attention to the room. Who's doing what? Why are they saying that? And that I took those lessons into adulthood, and they served me well.
Was your dad, when he drove through that River Oaks, was it for a specific reason to show you the homes, or was it just no? We were just,
I actually, he never said a word. I actually believe he was driving through the neighborhood so he could see those houses. Just so happened as a byproduct, there was his son sitting in the car paying attention, and that became the driver of really, oh man, I'm going to have one of those one day. And I'm incredibly blessed to be able to say, you know, now I live in a gated community. There's a pond in the backyard. My kids go to private Christian schools. So, and I have to give my dad a lot of credit. That 10-year-old that sat there and we got to drive through that neighborhood, man, game changing. Jeremy, I got to share this with you, man. Last Christmas, we were in Houston. I have 4 kids now. So we're in Houston. And like I said, ultra exclusive neighborhood. I mean, you've got houses in River Oaks. They spend $100,000 on Christmas lights, just decorating their homes. So there's horse and carriage rides you can take through the neighborhood to see the houses. And it is not cheap to do the horse and carriage ride, man. And so here I was with my family, my 4 kids, and we're on this horse and carriage ride, and we're riding through River Oaks, looking at the Christmas lights. And man, I'll man up. I cried. I was like, wow, look at
that.
This
Is emotional.
Yeah, it was a moment, man. I'm like, the very houses, some of them that I looked at when I was a kid, here I am now with my kids. And while we don't live in River Oaks, they live that lifestyle. And here I was with my kids going back through horse and carriage, and man, that was a moment.
There's a part of your story that strikes me, and any parent can relate to this, where you're kind of just left. I think you were 9 or something, left with a 6-month-old baby. And if any parent, you know, I remember leaving the hospital with our newborn baby, and you feel helpless. Like you have no idea what to do. Okay. And you're like, I have to be responsible for this thing. I need to keep this thing alive. And that's when people are in their 30s, right?
Yeah.
And so I heard that part of your story. I'm like, I have no idea what I would have done in that. I didn't even know what to do when I was in my 30s with a newborn baby. So take me back. You're kind of left just alone to take care of this baby.
So, man, to make it even worse, I'll give you the whole story behind that. Is I ended up with my dad in Houston, Texas, at a hourly rate motel, and we all know what goes down at an hourly rate motel. The way I even got there was my mother was facing welfare fraud. She was facing having to go to prison for welfare fraud. So she sent me to Houston. I was 9 years old. She sent me to Houston to be with my dad. why she tried to get everything taken care of and not go to prison. So I get to Houston. I show up at I remember it's the Surrey House Motel. And my dad, his prostitute, and my 6-month-old half sister were there. 2 days after I got there, my dad and the prostitute say, "Hey, we'll be back." And they left. They left me with my baby sister. Of course, as all babies do, my baby sister starts crying like 5 minutes after they leave. And I'm standing there and I'm 9 years old. I have no clue what to do. So I pick her up. I'm trying to console her. I'm like, "Shh, it's okay. It's okay." And she's still crying. And you start going into panic mode. I'm like, I don't know how to make a bottle. I don't know how to change a diaper. What do babies eat? A million and one things are going through your head because you don't know what to do. And I remember, man, there's two pieces to this. Damn, Jeremy, you made me think of something, man. I remember in that moment. Actually, I've never said this on a podcast. I was so confused and I was angry at the same time. And this actually may explain the other piece of this. I remember when I used to be sexually molested by one of my dad's prostitutes. She used to force me to perform oral sex on her at the ages of 6, 7, 8 years old. And I remember when I didn't do it right, she would slap me in the face, punch me in the head, and say, "Do it right." Some people may not like this joke. This is how I've dealt with it. It's in the past. I find laughter in things. Man, I'm a grown ass man, and I know grown adults that don't know what "do it right" means. So at 6, 7, 8 years old, what the hell does "do it right" means? What does that mean? And so, but I remember at times 7, 8 years old, thinking to myself, okay, I am never going to be in a position where I don't know what to do. And I made that decision 7, 8 years old. Like, hey, I always got to know what to do. I always got to know what to do. So I'm not in this position. So let's jump back over to the motel. Here I am. I'm 9 years old. I'm holding my baby sister and I don't know what to do, man. And I remember the feeling of helplessness and not knowing what to do and stress, just stressed the hell out. 20 minutes goes by. She's still crying. Man, I throw my baby sister across the room. And I remember when she left my fingertips, just instantly thinking, what the hell? What kind of monster throws a baby? And man, to this day, by the grace of God, my baby sister landed on the couch. And I went over, she's screaming. I went over, I picked her up and I'm trying to console her. I'm just, bawling. I'm crying now. And I don't know what to do, man. I'm just lost. First time I had been away from my mom for more than a weekend. I want to go home. And I remember then the prostitute walks in and she tells me to get out. And because she's got a man with her and it's time to do business. And she tells me to get out and she tells me to take my baby sister with me. She's still crying. We walk out. She's in a diaper. We're in Houston, Texas in July, sweltering heat, humidity, all just off the charts. And I'm walking around that nasty parking lot with my baby sister. She's crying. I'm crying. I remember I was looking for shade to try to keep her at least in the shade because we were sweating. But I just wanted to go home, man. That's the thing that kept. I wanted to go home. I wanted my mom. I didn't know what the hell was going on. How did I end up here? I'm like 9 years old. What the hell is going on in life? But yeah, that was a tough moment, man. And it would, like I said, it wasn't until this moment it clicked for me. I think a lot of that frustration of why I threw my baby sister was because there I was again, not knowing what to do.
Yeah. For you is in those moments, you wanted something you could control and you always wanted to know what to do. I'm just curious, why do you think, with that, all of that, it's just heart wrenching. I mean, that's just one of a zillion stories. If anyone reads your book, people think that that's just like the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately, with what happened, in your childhood. How do you think you turned out the way you did, seeing the model? Because I could see easily, because you started to, get into the juvenile system a little bit, but what was it in your mentality or seeing all this around you, and you kind of took the opposite route?
Man, I had a couple of things that really worked out in my favor. Some people would look at them as negatives. Here's something I always hear, Jeremy, that really gets under my skin. People will say to me, "Oh my God, you had every reason to fail. You had every reason not to succeed. People would totally understand if you were a victim." I wouldn't. I tell people, if you get through my background, I had every reason to succeed, because if you can make it through that shit, the rest of this is pretty easy. And so I've never, that was one thing. I always tried to take lessons from, even as a kid, how do I learn? How do I figure this out? How do we do things different? And then along the way, I had some great opportunities. Here's one. I was in juvenile, you nailed it. I was in juvenile prison 3 times. And if I had a regret on that book, was that I put juvenile detention. Man, I got to call it what it is. It's juvenile prison. It's prison for kids. I remember being in solitary confinement and not knowing if someone was ever going to come back and get me. And you want to talk about a mental mind shift as a kid, to be in solitary confinement 23 hours and wonder if somebody's going to come back and get you. And knowing your dad's in England, your mother's in Texas, you're in Dayton, Ohio, and no one knows you're in there. And it's just a complete mental, you're playing with your head the whole time, having conversations. But the 3rd time I was getting out of juvenile prison, this huge corrections officer, he gets on his knee, Jeremy, and he gets right in my face and he says, "Son, come here." He said, "If you ever come back here again, you're going to man prison." Jeremy, I'll be 50 years old this year, man. I don't know what it is about man prison. It doesn't sound right. I do not want to go to man prison. It just doesn't sound like man prison. Doesn't sound like things are going down the way I want them to. So that was a big.
You decided you weren't going back.
Yeah, I decided, I am not going to man prison. That doesn't sound good. I don't want to know what it is. And that corrections officer kept me from ever going back to juvenile prison, because now it was the fear of the unknown. Like, I don't want to know what that is. And then I also have to be respectful as well. After I had slept on benches at 13, because I was homeless, didn't have anywhere to go, my Uncle Bobby decided to take me in for whatever reason. And keep in mind, my dad had 23 kids. Man, by the grace of God, he took me in. And I guess he just got tired of watching me getting bounced around and whatever. But he took me in, and I got to live with my Uncle Bobby for about 18 months. And as a 13, 14-year-old kid, man, that was, especially for a boy, I got to see structure, discipline, routine, consistency. That was my first introduction to God. My Uncle Bobby was a Jehovah's Witness, and we had Bible study on Tuesday, Bible study on Thursday, church on Sunday, and relentless. Everything was be on time, keep your word, say what you mean, follow through. And I learned all that in a 15 to 18 month time frame from Uncle Bobby. So that was a big one for me. That's everything for me, was just a belief that there was something more, but I'd have to trace it all back to driving through River Oaks and being able to see that there was something different.
Yeah. I want to do a bit of a highlight reel over the jobs for a second. But before we do that, there's one part of the whole story that kind of baffles me. Okay. And it's the part when you're in the supermarket.
Oh man. So it's funny, man. If you ask me top three to five life lessons, like I said, I'll be 50 in September. Top 3 to 5 life lessons. This is one of the top lessons that I took from my dad. So my dad had me one weekend on one of those rare occasions. He actually followed through and picked me up. We're in the grocery store. No clue why. I've been asked, well, why were you in the grocery store? I don't know. It was my dad. You never knew what you were doing with my dad. So we're in the grocery store. And I was a shy kid. I lived with my mom, and my mom was very protective of me. She didn't have any family. So I literally was like a human baby doll to my mom. And so when I'm with my dad, my dad was rough. It was chaotic. My dad was a pimp. It wasn't like my dad was this nice, gentle, get on the floor, cuddle with you, man. My dad was a pimp. So I was shy. We're walking down the aisle. I remember the frozen food section, and this little girl walks by, and I'm 8 years old. And she says, "Hi, JeVon." And I don't say anything. I put my head down. I'm shy. And man, I feel this massive blow to the back of my head. My face hits the ground. My nose is bleeding. My lip is split. And then I'm pinned up against the frozen food section door with a forearm in my neck. And my dad's like 2 inches from my face. And he says to me, "I don't care who it is. You be kind, show respect, and say hello to everyone." Here's the damnedest thing, Jeremy. We had literally just finished collecting money from prostitutes. But the lesson stuck. The lesson stuck. And to this, man, I say hello to everyone. I don't care if I'm walking through a hotel and going to my room and somebody else is walking by and they've got their head down. I'm saying hello. And that it came from that lesson. And that was one of the most impactful lessons that like I said, top 3 to 5 from my childhood was that lesson.
Yeah, when you started to tell that story, when I was watching it, that was the last thing I was expecting that he was going to say when you're pinned up against that. So it's wild.
But here's what's key to that. I say to so many people, yes, it was chaotic. Yes, it was rough. Yes, it was harsh. But there are truly, I look at my lessons from life. I look at it just like diamonds. If anyone knows anything about having to mine a diamond, it's hard as hell to go find mining for diamonds. That's how I look at my childhood. There are some diamonds back there as far as the lessons go, and you had to do some serious mining to find those lessons. And I've taken some of those lessons and turned them into diamonds.
I want to hear the trajectory of your career a bit, just in fast forward. And then, because I want to talk about how you've helped Scribe Media navigate. But one of the first job, and it's, I don't know what you call it, irony, the first place that you were scrubbing toilets and what it was called. I thought you were making it up. Like when I first hear, I'm like, there's no way this is the name of the place. But start there and then fast forward me kind of through your professional career a little bit.
All right, man. So when I was a kid and you're poor, the laughter is really all you have. And so my mom and I would always joke that we were so poor, we couldn't afford the O and the R. We were just po. So after I get my GED, I get home and I walk in. I'm like, "Mom, we got my GED, whatever." And she says, "Great. You've got 2 weeks to get a job or get out." I was like, damn. And so we're in San Antonio at the time now. And so the next day I go looking for a job. The first place I stopped, because it was just the first place that I passed to go start looking for jobs. I could have gone to Kroger. I could have gone to Walmart, Target, McDonald's, Burger King, you name it. So many places I could have gone. Nope. First place I got a job was Po Folks. Can't make that up, man. My only regret is that I don't still have a pay stub that actually showed I worked there. But yes, my first job was at Po Folks.
What
And
was Popo? Is it a restaurant?
it was a restaurant. It was think like a Cracker Barrel, something
Okay.
along those lines. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was
Like,
my.
who wanted to name a restaurant that?
Who knows, man? I know.
They should have
was
had you
pretty
on the
popular.
executive team on that decision.
But my first job there was I was a busboy, and I was responsible for cleaning the toilets from the night before.
Mhm.
And so, of course, you come in the next morning, and the toilets are filthy, because they're from the night crowd, whatever. And I remember standing there, and Jeremy, here's another one. I got to give my dad credit for this. I'm standing there, I'm looking at the toilets, and I said to myself, okay, if this is my job, I'm going to have the cleanest toilets in San Antonio. I'm going to have the cleanest toilets in Texas. And I remember saying that. Where that came from, my dad, when I was a kid, had 2 or 3 of my brothers with me that day. And he told us, he said, look, I don't care what you do in life. Whatever you do in life, be the best at it. If you're going to sweep the streets, be the best street sweeper. Now, he could have given us a little something more to aspire to, but that was the lesson. I got it, was, okay, be the best. And so I had the cleanest toilets. And so everything I did from that point on, I was trying to be the best at it. When I cleaned the tables, not only did I clean the tables, I wiped down the salt shaker and the pepper shaker. Not only that, I would make sure that the chairs didn't have any crumbs in them. So I always want to do it more, do it better, be the best. Fast forward, man, I got to tell you this. So there were 2 people that would come in there and eat lunch every day. And so for like 3 months, I didn't even know this. For 3 months, they would watch me do my job. And then one day they said, hey, you should come work for us. I'm like, what do you do? And they owned a knick-knack type Fabergé egg candle place in the mall. Now, I'm 18 years old. This is back when the mall was the hotness, the place to be. And they said, we'll teach you how to make candles. You'll stand in front of the window at the mall and you'll make candles. I'm like, oh my God, count me in. You're like, you're going to pay me more, teach me to make candles at the mall. I'm like, oh, sign me up. And so that was, I went there, and I wasn't there that long because then my mom got me a job at the insurance company she was working at. And my first job at the insurance company, I got the job. I was the mail boy. I pushed a cart. I delivered mail. I was a filer. And so this is actually where I learned how to trade stocks, was at the insurance company. I'm pushing my cart by one day, and I go by a sign, and it says free lunch and learn 401k. All I saw was free lunch and learn. I'm like, okay,
I see free lunch. That's
yeah, free lunch. I'm in. It could have been about the female reproductive system. I am in. Count me in for this. And so I'm pushing my cart. I go by, and a lady walks by, and I say to her, I said, excuse me, can you tell me where conference room 401k is? And she laughs and she goes, no. That's what the conference, the lunch and learn is about, 401k. I mean, I thought it was a conference room. I didn't even know. So I go to this conference, the free lunch and learn. Man, I heard 2 of the greatest words in history, compound interest. And I was hooked. Everything from that point on, I wanted to read about stocks. I wanted to know about trading. I was just like blown away. I'm like, wait a minute, you can take $100 and turn it into 2 and 2 into 5 and so on and so forth. And like, this is legal. And so I was hooked, man. And that's where I learned it from. The insurance company, I went into payday loans, moved to Portland, Oregon. I was there for 3 years. Got to learn everything about high interest payday loans. It's a dirty business. But it helps out some people as well. I left payday loans, got into mortgage, learned everything in mortgages, from loan processor to loan officer to account executive to all the way up to selling package loans, CDOs, and everything in between. Got to share this part with you because this part didn't make the book. When we had my book launch party, because I got to work at Countrywide Home Loans during my mortgage tenure, which Countrywide Home Loans was the largest home lender in the world at one point. And we're at my book launch party, and a lady comes up to me and she goes, "Hey, I read your book. It was great." She said, particularly, I enjoyed the part about you spoke fondly of Countrywide Home Loans. And I go into, I'm like, "Oh, I love that place. I loved it. It was so cool. Angelo Mazzello started that company on a fold out card table in California, and he turned into the law." And I just went on and on and on. And then as soon as I stopped, she goes, "Angelo Mazzello is my grandfather." And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Yes." She texts him right there. He responds. Fast forward, she actually arranged, I got to fly out to California at Angelo Mazzello's house and meet him face to face. And I spent the day with, man, that was awesome, because for whatever anybody wants to say about the mortgage industry and Angelo Mazzello, it wasn't just Angelo Mazzello that the mortgage industry collapsed. It was so many different players and consumers as well. It wasn't just the banks. It was people taking out the damn loans as well. But it was a highlight for me to be able to meet Angelo. So then credit market crashed. And then from there, I was as I said, I was the lowest paid person, sales guy at a software company, sat on a fold out metal chair, became the president. Then from there, here I am at Scribe.
Amazing. JeVon. Thanks for sharing that. I thought just the journey, with some of the stories we get to hear personal journey, and I never got to hear the work journey, but I'd love to talk about Scribe for a little bit. And when you go in to a company and, like Tucker and his partner founders, they have a humility to be like, "Listen, we know where our strengths are. We know where we need help." And they bring you in as a CEO. What are the things you do to improve Scribe?
The first thing we talked about it was that author experience. That was one of the first things. The other piece, and this is very critical for so many people. Most who are founders, they have a great idea for a product or service. They start that product or service, and they wake up one day and they have 7 people working with them, and they think to themselves, "Oh shit, I got a business. I got payroll. I got taxes. I need an income statement. I need a balance sheet. People want healthcare. Wait a minute. I just had a product or service. I didn't know that all this other stuff came with it." And so many of your founders, they love their idea of their product or service. They never wanted the other aspects that come along with business. I just happen to love the business aspect of it. How do you scale a company? How do you grow a company? The culture that comes along with a company. And for me, I find it very simple. People, process, profits. And with those profits, as a bonus, you can do great things for the communities that you live in. So I keep everything very simple for me. My again, off my background, I'm not, anything over 5 is too many. So I boil everything down to 3 to 5. What are 3 to 5? And so again, you heard me say people, process, profits. So many companies will get those out of order. So many companies will go like, "Nope, you got to have a flawless process first, then you hire the people." My argument is you can have a flawless process, but if you have bad people, they will wreck your shit. And so you have great people that can build great process. You can make great profits. And I just keep everything real simple. The other benefit, I do believe I've been blessed to find my lane in life, if you will. Coming from the chaos I grew up in, I find great peace in business because it is structured. It's very disciplined. It's very routine. You get to pull the levers. And I really enjoy that. Coming from the chaos I grew up in, business is dare I say, very therapeutic. So, that's what I look at when I see a business is, okay, I just start asking questions, but above all, are you putting people first?
I mean, when I talked to Tucker, one of the things he said about you was that you're a master of operations and that you were able to, what were some of the operational pieces that you helped kind of structure with, like you said, when you met them, I guess they were, maybe about 2 years into the journey.
Man, one of my favorite moments with Tucker and Zach, and I said, okay, how do people pay you? And they said, well, we take credit card, or people write us a check. I said, okay, cool. I said, what's the interest rate that you're paying for accepting the credit cards? And they felt real confident, like 2.99. I was like, okay, great. It could be lower, but it's not bad. And then I said this, Jeremy, I go, so why don't you have everybody set up on ACH? And they look at me and they're like, but literally they go, what the hell is ACH? And I go, man, you can do all of this for free. Just run the payments through the bank in automatic draft. Where that's a thing? And I was like, yeah, that's a thing. So again, two guys, great idea. But like I said, running the business, that's a whole different party. And so many, look at a lot of your founders out there right now, even if you want to go to the top of the food chain, the Bezos, the Zuckerbergs, the Musk, everyone celebrates them, but okay, they had a great idea. Okay. Hell, let's pick on Bezos for a second, Jeremy. This is a good one. People will appreciate this. Bezos had a great idea. He's on the floor of his garage, stuffing books in an envelope. He looks over at the person next to him and he says, what would be great if we had knee pads? And the person looks back at him and says, no, if we had tables, that would be great. So they look over in the corner, they see a door, and then they put the door on two sawhorses. They stand up, and that becomes the first table that they worked off of. My point being is, everyone celebrates Jeff Bezos. Very few people even know this name when I say it, Jeff Wilke. Jeff Wilke was with Jeff Bezos from 1999 through all of the success that Amazon had. Founders are great. I'm not taking anything from them, but it's never one person that makes a great company. It takes a team of people. And so for me, back to your point, what people say, well, what's your leadership philosophy? What's your leadership style? I said, okay, it's real simple. 3 rules. Surround the company with people far smarter than myself. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, surround myself with people far smarter than myself. Rule number 3, repeat rules 1 and 2. That's it. I'm done. It's all I got for leadership. I learned a long time ago, the goal is not to be the smartest person in the room. The goal is to surround yourself with the smartest people in the room. The goal is to be able to ask any question that pops in your head and know that someone in this company has the answer.
JeVon, I want to be the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing your story. Everyone check out scribemedia.com. And I can't wait to watch the movie about you where they make that book. And you're like, I don't want anyone to hear it. I just want 5 people. And then it's going to be a book. And eventually it'll be a movie. So really, JeVon, much gratitude. Thanks for sharing.
Jeremy, this was great, man. I appreciate you having me on, sir.
Thanks, everyone.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100 grand.